Noah Carter grabbed a stranger's wrist at 30,000 feet. Not out of anger. Not out of fear. Out of pure, raw desperation, because his baby daughter hadn't stopped screaming for 47 minutes. The entire cabin was staring at him like he was a criminal, and he had just knocked over a full cup of coffee onto the lap of the man in seat 14B while trying to pace the aisle with a 6-month-old pressed against his chest. That was the moment everything fell apart. And somehow impossibly, it was also the moment everything began. Drop a comment with your city right now. I want to see how far this story travels. And if you're new here, hit that subscribe button. You will not want to miss what happens next. The boarding announcement for Flight 2247 came at 6:14 in the morning, and Noah Carter was already sweating. He had Emma in the carrier on his chest, 6 months old, roughly the size and weight of a bag of potatoes, and twice as unpredictable. Her head was tucked under his chin. One fat little fist was wrapped around the collar of his gray Henley. She smelled like baby shampoo and the faint sourness of spit-up he had at FOF, fully off cause he'd run out of clean burp cloths, somewhere around the third diaper change at 4 a.m. He had a diaper bag strapped to his back that weighed more than some carry-on suitcases. He had a portable formula dispenser in his left jacket pocket. He had a pacifier clipped to the carrier strap, a second pacifier loose in his right jacket pocket because the first one always got lost, a teething ring hooked to the diaper bag zipper, and a small white noise machine shoved under his arm. He had thought of everything. He had been thinking of everything, every single day, for 6 months. And still, the moment he stepped into the jetway and felt the pressure change in the air, Emma stirred against his chest and let out a sound, not quite a cry yet, just a warning, a low, restless whimper, and Noah's stomach dropped straight to the floor. Not yet, he thought. Please, not yet. He smiled at the gate agent as she scanned his boarding pass. The woman barely looked up. Have a good flight, she said. Noah nodded. Yeah, he said. Thanks. He didn't say what he was actually thinking, which was, I haven't had a good anything in 6 months, and I don't know if I remember what that feels like. The seat was 14A, window seat. He'd chosen it deliberately. He'd read somewhere that window seats were better for babies on planes because the white noise from the engines was louder against the fuselage, and it mimicked womb sounds, and womb sounds were supposed to be soothing. He'd spent 40 minutes reading about it at 2 a.m. 2 weeks ago while Emma slept on his chest, and he was afraid to put her down because every time he put her down she woke up screaming. He'd become an expert on things like this. Womb sounds. Wake windows. The difference between a hunger cry and an overtired cry and a gas pain cry. The exact angle you had to hold a bottle to prevent air bubbles. The 17-step bedtime routine that sometimes worked and sometimes didn't work at all, and you had no idea which it would be until you were already 20 minutes in. He'd learned all of it alone. That was the part people didn't see when they looked at him, this tall, broad-shouldered guy in his mid-30s with a baby strapped to his chest and dark circles under his eyes. They just saw a man with a baby. They didn't see the mountain of knowledge he'd built from scratch. Book by book, YouTube video by YouTube video, phone call by phone call to his mother, his sister, a pediatric nurse hotline at 3 a.m. when Emma had a fever, and he'd genuinely thought he was going to lose his mind. They didn't see the 6 months of trying. They just saw him failing. He got Emma settled into the window seat. Technically, she was in his lap, but he'd angled himself toward the window so she could see the tarmac, which sometimes distracted her. The man in 14B hadn't arrived yet. The overhead bin was filling up around him. A flight attendant walked past and gave Emma a professional smile. "Oh, how old?" she asked. 6 months, Noah said. "Gorgeous," the flight attendant said, and kept walking. Emma looked at him. She had her mother's eyes. That was the first thing Noah had thought when the nurse placed her in his arms in the delivery room, and it was the thing he thought every single morning when she woke up and looked at him from her crib. Dark gray, almost slate-colored, with these long lashes that didn't belong on something that small. She would blink at him slowly, and sometimes she'd reach up and put her palm flat against his cheek, and he didn't know if babies did that on purpose, or if it was just muscle movement. but it always felt like something. Like she was checking to make sure he was still there. He was always still there. That was the one thing he'd gotten right. "Hey, Bug," he said quietly, bouncing her gently on his knee. "We're gonna be okay." Emma stared at him. "I mean it," he said. She blew a spit bubble. "That's fair," he said. The man in 14B turned out to be somewhere around 60, heavyset, wearing a collared shirt that was slightly too tight around the neck, carrying a briefcase and a cup of airport coffee. He looked at Noah. He looked at Emma. He looked back at Noah with an expression that wasn't hostile but wasn't warm either, just the resigned, preemptive irritation of a man who had already calculated the odds of a miserable flight and found them high. "She a good traveler?" the man asked, settling into his seat. "First time," Noah said. The man said nothing. He put his briefcase under the seat. He took a sip of his coffee. He opened a newspaper, the actual physical paper kind, and held it up in front of his face. Noah bounced Emma on his knee and told himself this was fine. For 22 minutes, it was fine. Emma watched the world through the window with those big gray eyes. She grabbed at the teething ring. She chewed on it. She made a series of small, self-satisfied sounds that Noah had come to think of as her commentary track, her ongoing narration of the world as she understood it, which seemed to involve a lot of observations about texture and light. The plane taxied. The engines got louder. Emma's eyes went wide at the noise, and Noah leaned down close to her ear. "Just the engines," he said, like a really big fan. "Remember fans? You like fans." She did like fans. At home, he'd installed a ceiling fan in her room, and it was the single most effective sleep tool he owned. She would stare at it, and her whole body would just release, like a fist unclenching. The plane lifted. Emma grabbed his collar and held on, and something about the grip of those tiny fingers made Noah's throat tighten. "We're good," he said to her, to himself, to whoever was listening. "We've got this." 31 minutes into the flight, Emma began to cry. It wasn't gradual. It wasn't a slow build. One moment she was chewing the teething ring and looking out the window, and the next moment she was crying, really crying. The kind that came from somewhere deep and urgent. The kind that said something is wrong in a language that predated words. Noah moved immediately. He knew the order of operations by now. Check the obvious things first. He checked her diaper. Clean. He offered her the pacifier. She pushed it away. He offered her a bottle. She turned her head. He shifted her position upright against his chest, then cradled in his arms, then over his shoulder. He tried the bounce, the sway, the side-to-side rock, and then jiggle. Nothing. She just kept crying. The man in 14B lowered his newspaper 2 inches and looked over the top of it. Noah didn't make eye contact. He stood up carefully, tucking Emma against his chest, and began walking the aisle. This sometimes worked. Motion was good. Changes of scenery were good. He'd read this. He knew this. He walked slowly toward the back of the plane, bouncing gently with each step, murmuring into Emma's hair. She screamed into his chest. He could feel the vibration of it against his ribs, against his sternum, against some place in him that had no name. A woman in an aisle seat, maybe 50, reading glasses on, paperback novel in her lap, looked up at him as he passed. Her expression was not cruel. It was something more complicated than cruel. It was the look of someone who had made a decision about him and wanted him to know it. He kept walking. A man near the back, younger, maybe early 30s, had his headphones around his neck and was scrolling his phone. He looked up, looked at Emma, and very deliberately put his headphones back on. Noah reached the galley at the back and stood there, bouncing, swaying, doing every single thing he knew how to do. A flight attendant glanced at him. He gave her the universal look of "I'm handling it. I promise." Emma screamed. He went back to his seat. At the 40-minute mark, the man in 14B said, "Can't you do something about that?" He said it, without looking up from his newspaper. Noah had Emma pressed against his shoulder, one hand rubbing her back in slow circles, the other holding the teething ring she kept rejecting. He'd already tried the white noise machine. He'd tried singing quietly. Into her ear, just the few bars of a lullaby he'd taught himself from a YouTube video because He didn't actually know any lullabies and had to learn them the way he'd learned everything else about fatherhood, by finding a resource and studying it like a textbook at midnight. "I'm trying," Noah said. "She's been going for a while," the man said. "I know," Noah said. "I'm aware." The man finally looked at him. "You got a wife on this flight? Someone else who can take her?" And there it was, not mean exactly, just careless. The way people sometimes said things without thinking about what those words could mean, what shape they could cut. Noah looked at him for a long moment. "No," he said. "There's just me." The man held his gaze for a second, then went back to his newspaper. "Well," he said, in a tone that was clearly meant to close the conversation. "Hopefully she settles down." Noah turned back to Emma. He didn't say anything else. He pressed his lips to the top of her head and breathed in the smell of her hair, and thought about his wife not the way he usually let himself think about her, which was in controlled flashes, quick and safe, like touching something hot for just a second before pulling back. He let himself think about her for a real moment. Her name was Sarah. She would have known what to do. She always knew what to do. Sarah had been the calm one. Noah was the planner, the researcher, the guy who read all the books and made all the lists. But Sarah had this quality, this steadiness. She could walk into a room full of chaos and just absorb it, like she had a specific gravity that settled everything around her. He'd told her that once, and she'd laughed at him. "You just say that. Because I'm the one who can find your keys," she'd said. "You're always the one who finds my keys," he'd said. "Because you put them in the wrong place every single time," she'd said. "Every time, Noah. 15 years, he'd said. "We'd only been together 10 years. "Fine," she'd said. 10 years of wrong keys. That's basically a felony." He remembered the exact angle of the light in the kitchen when they'd had that conversation. Saturday morning. The windows were dirty, and the sun came through them a little milky. She'd been drinking coffee and reading something on her tablet, and he'd been making eggs, badly, because he always burned them, and she always finished them when he wasn't looking, and then pretended she'd never eaten anything. He missed her. Every day, in 100 different small ways, he missed her. He'd had 6 months to get used to missing her, and he wasn't used to it. He didn't think you got used to it. He thought, "You just got better at carrying it." Emma wailed. He came back to the present. The woman with the reading glasses 3 rows up from him, on the opposite side, turned around in her seat to look at him. Not to help, just to look. To communicate without words that this was unacceptable, that he was failing some kind of test. He looked back at her. She turned around. A teenage boy somewhere behind him made a sound that was not quite a groan but close enough. Noah heard it. He heard it the way you heard everything when you were already at your limit, every sound landing with more weight than it was supposed to have. He tried the bottle again. Emma wasn't hungry. He tried the pacifier again. Emma threw it on the floor. He bent to pick it up. His elbow caught the tray table. The tray table caught the man in 14B's coffee cup, the paper one he'd balanced on the armrest, the one Noah had vaguely noticed as a hazard, but not addressed because he'd been busy with Emma, and the went over, and coffee went everywhere. The man in 14B made a sound like he'd been struck. "Are you serious right now?" he said. "I'm so sorry," Noah said immediately, reaching for the napkins in the seat back pocket. "I'm so sorry here. That was a full cup," the man said. "I know, I'm sorry, that's hot." "I know." Noah was pressing napkins against the seat, against the man's slacks, doing everything he could. Emma was still crying. He was trying to hold her steady with one arm while mopping up coffee with the other, and it wasn't working. Nothing was working. Everything was impossible. "I'm so sorry. I'll get the flight attendant. I've got it," the man said, taking the napkins from him, with a look that said, very clearly, "Stop touching my things." Noah sat back. Emma screamed. He closed his eyes for exactly 2 seconds. He took a breath. He opened his eyes. He looked at his daughter, red-faced, desperate, completely overwhelmed by whatever was wrong inside her small perfect body, and he thought, "I don't know what else to do." It was the first time he'd admitted it. Not to Emma. Not out loud. But to himself, in that honest private space where you couldn't pretend anymore. I don't know what else to do. And underneath that, quieter, the thought he really didn't want to have. She would have known. The voice came from behind him, over his right shoulder. Excuse me. He turned. The woman in the seat directly behind him, 15A, had leaned forward. She was maybe 32, 33. Dark hair pulled back. No makeup, or if there was makeup, it was the kind that looked like no makeup. She had a quality of stillness about her that was different from the stillness of disengagement. She wasn't ignoring Emma's crying. She'd been listening to it, watching it, thinking about it. Next to her, a little girl, maybe 4 years old, was asleep against the window. A stuffed rabbit tucked under her chin, completely undisturbed by this noise, the way only a sleeping child can be completely undisturbed by anything. The woman had her hand resting on the seat back in front of her. She was looking at Noah with an expression he didn't recognize at first because he hadn't seen it in a while. It wasn't pity. It wasn't judgment. It wasn't the complex social math of someone calculating how to extract themselves from an uncomfortable situation. It was just attention. Clear, direct, human attention. How long has she been crying? The woman asked. Noah checked his watch. 47 minutes, he said. The woman nodded slowly. Like that number meant something to her. Like she was factoring it into something. Can I try? She said. He stared at her. Try what? Holding her. She said it simply. Like it was the most natural thing in the world. Which it wasn't. Which was insane. Which was something you didn't do. You didn't hand your baby to a stranger on an airplane. Sometimes babies just need a change. A different body, a different smell. It's not about skill. It's not about what you're doing wrong. Sometimes it's just new. He stared at her. He thought about saying no. He had the word ready. He had about 15 reasons organized behind it. I'm not going to take her anywhere, the woman said, reading his hesitation accurately. I'll hold her right here, in the aisle, where you can see both of us the whole time. I've got a 4-year-old. I know what I'm doing. She paused. And I know what it looks like when someone's been doing this alone for a long time. Noah looked at her. He looked at Emma. Emma looked at him with those gray eyes and screamed. Okay, Noah said. He stood up and carefully lifted Emma off his chest. His arms felt weird and wrong without the weight of her. He held Emma out, and the woman carefully, with a quiet confidence that came from somewhere real, took her. She didn't hold Emma the way Noah held her. She shifted her immediately to a different position. Turned, slightly outward, the woman's forearm angled differently. Then she began to move, not the bounce Noah had been doing, but something slower, a kind of sideways roll, like a boat on water. She started humming, low and slow, not a song Noah recognized, just a melody, old-fashioned, something that sounded like it had been handed down. Emma's crying stuttered. It didn't stop immediately, but it stuttered. It hiccuped. It lost its certainty. The woman kept humming, and then between one breath and the next Emma went quiet. Not asleep, just quiet. Her head against the woman's shoulder, her eyes wide open and unfocused, locked on something only she could see. Her whole body had gone soft. The man in 14B lowered his newspaper. The woman with the reading glasses turned around and looked. The teenage boy took off one headphone. The cabin breathed. Noah stood in the aisle and felt something move through him that he couldn't name. Relief. Yes. Gratitude. Yes. But something else underneath those things. Something more complicated. Something he'd been pressing down for 6 months without knowing he was pressing it down. The woman looked at him over Emma's head. Go sit down, she said quietly. She's okay. Noah sat down. His hands were shaking slightly. He pressed them flat on his knees and looked out the window at the clouds, and took the first full breath he'd taken in 47 minutes. He thought, who is she? He thought, what just happened? And then, underneath both of those questions, something older and more honest. I needed that. I needed someone to tell me she was okay. I needed someone who wasn't judging me to look at me like I wasn't failing. He pressed his palms harder against his knees. Behind him, the woman was still humming. Emma was still quiet. The man in 14B had gone back to his newspaper, but his posture was different now, less rigid, like some tension he'd been carrying had also Slightly released. Noah exhaled. He looked at the clouds. He thought about Sarah. He thought, I'm trying, Sarah. I'm doing everything I know how to do. He thought, some days that's not enough. He thought, today a stranger stepped in. He thought, I don't know what that means yet. He didn't know her name. He didn't know anything about her. She was just a woman on a plane who had seen him struggling and had offered something simple, her hands, her steadiness, a song she remembered from someone else's life. But for reasons he couldn't fully explain, sitting there with his hands flat on his knees and his daughter finally, mercifully quiet, somewhere behind him, Noah Carter felt less alone than he had in 6 months. Just barely. Just enough. And something about just enough to keep moving, just enough to take the next breath, just enough to remember that the world still had people in it who would reach toward a stranger instead of away from them. Something about that felt like the most important thing he'd encountered since the day his world cracked open and he'd had to figure out how to hold the pieces with the same hands that were supposed to be holding his daughter. His daughter, who was quiet now. His daughter, who was safe. His daughter, who had her mother's eyes. He closed his own eyes. The engines hummed. Outside, the clouds were white and infinite, and they didn't care about any of it, which was somehow exactly what he needed to be held inside, something that was too large to judge him, too vast to keep score. He breathed. He waited. He didn't know yet what was coming, but for the first time in a long time, he thought he might be able to handle it. Emma had been quiet for exactly 4 minutes when Noah made the mistake of turning around. He knew, even as he did it, that it was the wrong move. You didn't check on a sleeping baby. You didn't make eye contact with a quiet baby. You didn't remind the universe that things were going well, because the universe had a way of correcting that immediately. He knew all of this. He'd learned it the hard way, multiple times, in the first weeks of Emma's life, when he was still figuring out the basic physics of keeping a human infant alive. He turned around anyway. Emma was awake. She was not crying. She was looking up at the woman with those big gray eyes, and the woman was looking back at her with an expression that Noah couldn't fully see from the angle he was at. But something about the line of her shoulders, the tilt of her head, made him think it was the kind of look you gave something you'd needed to see for a long time, without knowing you needed it. The woman felt him looking. She glanced up. She's good, she said quietly. Yeah, Noah said. I can see that. There was a pause that was not quite comfortable, but was not uncomfortable either. It was the pause of two people who had just shared something real without agreeing to it in advance. You can take her back, the woman said. Whenever you want. I know, Noah said. He didn't take her back immediately. He told himself. It was because Emma was calm, and he didn't want to disturb that. He told himself it was practical. It had nothing to do with the fact that, for the first time, in 6 months, someone else was holding his daughter, and he could feel in the absence of that weight just how heavy it had been. I'm Noah, he said. Claire, the woman said. She shifted Emma slightly, resettling her against her shoulder, and Emma made a small sound, not unhappy, just present, just announcing her own existence the way babies did when they weren't in crisis. She yours? Noah asked, nodding toward the little girl still asleep in 15A. Sophie, Claire said. 4.5. She can sleep through anything. Earthquakes, probably. That's a gift, Noah said. It's a miracle, Claire said. She was Emma's age once, and I thought I was going to lose my mind. She paused. I did lose my mind, actually, for a while. Noah looked at her. It gets easier, she said. Then she stopped herself. I hate when people say that. Me too, Noah said. But it does, she said. That part's true. The part people don't tell you is that easier doesn't mean easy. It just means you're carrying the same weight, but your arms have gotten out stronger. He stared at her for a moment. How long did that take? Claire thought about it. Actually thought about it, which he appreciated. People usually said something automatic when you asked them questions like that. Something reassuring and vague. Claire was quiet for 3 full seconds before she answered. Longer than I wanted, she said. Shorter than I was afraid of. Noah nodded slowly. Emma's fingers found the collar of Claire's shirt and gripped it. Neither of them said anything. The man in 14B shifted in his seat, settled more deeply into his newspaper. The plane moved through a pocket of light turbulence, a brief, gentle shudder, and then smoothed out again. Somewhere further back, a child laughed at something, a sudden bright sound that cut through the ambient noise and dissolved just as quickly. "She's 6 months?" Claire asked. 6.5, Noah said. "Almost. What's her name?" "Emma." Claire looked down at Emma. "Hi, Emma," she said softly. Emma stared up at her with those eyes. "She looks like she's thinking very hard about something." "She always looks like that," Noah said. "I've decided she's a philosopher." Claire smiled. It was a real smile, not the polite kind. It reached her eyes and did something to the steadiness of her face, broke it open a little into something warmer. "That tracks," she said. "The ones who can't talk yet have to figure out the world entirely through observation. They probably know things we've forgotten." "That's the most comforting thing anyone has said to me in weeks," Noah said. Claire laughed, quiet, surprised. "That's a low bar." "You have no idea," Noah said. And then he stopped smiling because the words had more out utterly than he'd intended, and the truth of them landed in the babe's between spoon with a weight neither of them was quite ready for. Claire didn't look away from him. She didn't fill the silence with something easy. She just said, "How old is she in terms of alone?" He blinked. "What? How long have you been doing this by yourself?" Noah looked at Emma. "Since the beginning," he said. Claire absorbed that. He could see her doing it, something shifting behind her eyes, rearranging itself into a new shape. "Her mother?" Claire said, and the way she said it was careful. Not presumptuous, not demanding, just open, like a door left ajar. "She didn't make it," Noah said, after delivery. "There were complications." He said it, the way he'd learned to say it, flat and clean. "The way you handled something sharp. You held it at a specific angle. You didn't squeeze it." Emma was 4 hours old. Claire was quiet. "I'm sorry," she said. And it was not the automatic sorry, the reflexive social sorry. It was the kind that came from somewhere genuine, the kind that acknowledged it had no power to fix anything, and said so plainly. "Thank you," Noah said. Emma made a small sound against Claire's shoulder. Both of them looked at her. She had her eyes half closed now, the long lashes drooping. She was fighting sleep the way babies did, the way humans did, with everything they had and losing anyway. "She's going down," Claire said. "Don't jinx it," Noah said. Claire smiled again, smaller this time. She started the humming again, that same low melody, barely audible over the engine noise. Noah watched Emma's lashes flutter. He watched his daughter's fist slowly release Claire's collar and fall open against her chest. He watched Emma sleep. And then he looked at Claire, really looked at her. The way he hadn't allowed himself to do before, because he'd been too overwhelmed to see anything outside the immediate emergency of his own life, and he noticed for the first time that her eyes were red. Not the red of irritation, not allergies. The specific red of someone who had been crying recently, and recently was not that long ago. "Are you okay?" he asked. Claire blinked. She looked almost surprised that he'd asked. "I'm fine," she said. The word came out automatic. He recognized it immediately, because he used it himself constantly, reflexively, the way you learned to use it when the truth was too large and too private to hand to strangers. It was a shield word. It didn't mean fine. It meant, "I've decided not to answer that." "You don't have to be," he said. She looked at him. "Fine," he clarified. "You don't have to be fine. I'm clearly not fine. You helped me anyway. That seems like a fair exchange." Claire was quiet for a moment. She looked down at Emma, who was fully asleep now, her whole body loose and heavy against Claire's shoulder. "My mother died," Claire said. 4 days ago." The words landed simply, without preparation. "I was at the funeral," she continued. "In Portland. We're flying home." She glanced at Sophie. "I've been trying to figure out how to tell Sophie that Grandma isn't coming back. Sophie knows she was sick, but the distance between sick and gone is..." She stopped. She pressed her lips together for a second. "It's bigger than I know how to cross." Noah said nothing for a moment. "How old was your mother?" he asked. 68, Claire said. "Which isn't even that old. People keep saying she lived a full life, and I keep wanting to scream at them that 68 isn't A full life. 68 is barely the beginning of what I thought we were going to have. She caught herself. Sorry. You don't need. I want to hear it, Noah said. Keep going. She looked at him. With that expression, he was starting to recognize the one that meant she was checking whether he was serious. Whether he actually wanted the real answer, or just a version of it that was easier to hold. She had a coffee shop, Claire said. Well, it's my coffee shop now, technically. We ran it together. We ran it since I was 19. I don't know how to run it without her. What was her name? Noah asked. Margaret, Claire said. Everyone called her Maggie. Tell me something about Maggie, Noah said. Claire's breath caught. It was barely audible, but he heard it. She hadn't expected that question. Nobody had asked her that. They'd asked how she was holding up. They'd asked about arrangements. They'd asked about Sophie. They'd asked about practical things, necessary things. Nobody had asked her to remember something good. She used to put way too much sugar in her own coffee, Claire said slowly. Like an embarrassing amount. She'd be the one advising customers on single origin beans and the perfect extraction ratio, and then she'd go to the back and dump 4 sugars into her cup. She exhaled a short breath that was almost a laugh. She said, life was too short to drink bitter things. Noah nodded. She sounds like she was right about that. She was right about most things, Claire said. I spent a lot of years arguing with her, and it turned out she was just. Her voice frayed at the edge. She stopped. Right. She was just right. Emma sighed in her sleep, a small complete sound. Can I ask you something? Noah said. You can try. Why did you offer to take her? He said. Emma, you had a sleeping kid next to you. You just lost your mother. He gestured vaguely. You had every reason to put your headphones in and leave me to it. Claire thought about this for a moment. Because I watched you for 40 minutes, she said finally. And I've seen a lot of people with babies who don't care, who are annoyed, or distracted, or going through the motions. You weren't going through the motions. You were trying so hard it hurt to watch. She paused. And I needed to do something. I've felt completely useless for 4 days. Standing at my mother's grave, thinking I couldn't save her. I couldn't fix it. There was nothing I could do. And then I looked up, and here was this specific, small, fixable problem. A baby who needed to be held a different way. She looked at Emma. That's all. That's the whole reason. Noah was quiet. You weren't useless, he said. I know that, she said. In my head I know that. It's just grief doesn't live in your head. It lives somewhere lower. Yeah, he said, it does. They looked at each other. It was the look of two people. It was the look of people who had just understood something about each other that would take a much long conversation to fully articulate, and who both knew it, and who were both, underneath their separate losses, slightly afraid of what that meant. The plane hit another patch of turbulence. Longer this time. A series of slow, rolling drops that made the overhead bins rattle and sent a murmur through the cabin. A woman somewhere behind them made a sharp sound of alarm. The flight attendant on the intercom said smoothly that they were experiencing moderate turbulence and asked everyone to return to their seats. Claire stood, Emma still against her shoulder. I should sit back down, she said. Let me take her, Noah said, standing. She's asleep, Claire said. If I hand her to you and she wakes up. I know, Noah said. But she's your seat. You can't. I can sit in the aisle seat, Claire said. There's no one in 15B. I'll put her here, and you can lean back and watch her. When she wakes up, you take her. She looked at him steadily. Just let her sleep. He looked at her for a long moment. Okay, he said. He sat back down. Claire settled carefully into 15B, directly behind and beside him, angled so they could speak over the gap between the seats. Emma slept on, undisturbed, held against Claire's chest like she'd always been there. Sophie stirred. She opened her eyes brown, nothing like Claire's, probably her father's, and looked at Emma with the interested, unsurprised evaluation of a child encountering a smaller child. Who's that? Sophie asked, in the loud, unmodulated voice of a 4-year-old who had not yet learned that volume was something you adjusted for situations. Her name's Emma, Claire said quietly. She was crying. We're helping her sleep. Sophie considered this. Is she sad? She was, Claire said. She's better now. Sophie looked at Emma for another moment, then apparently decided this was satisfactory and went back to the stuffed rabbit, pulling it up under her chin with the practice authority of a child who had established her sleep routine and was not going to let anything compromise it. The man in 14B, Noah noticed, had lowered his newspaper again. Not fully, but the top edge was down about 3 inches, and Noah had the distinct impression he had been listening to the conversation for some time. He didn't say anything to the man. The man didn't say anything to him. But something in the atmosphere between them had shifted in the way that atmospheres sometimes did when the temperature changed, and nobody commented on it, but everyone felt it. Noah looked at the clouds. Then he turned back toward Claire. "How long is the flight?" she asked. He checked. "About an hour and 20 left." She nodded. "Tell me about Sarah," Claire said. He didn't answer immediately. He absorbed the request. The fact of it. The fact that she'd remembered the name. He hadn't said it, he realized. He hadn't said Sarah's name. He'd said she didn't make it. That was all. He hadn't said the name. "I didn't tell you her name," he said. "No," Claire said, "I assumed." "Is that wrong?" "No," he said. "Sarah's right." He looked at Emma. "She was a high school English teacher," he said. "Which sounds boring until you understand that she was the least boring person I've ever met. She had a way of finding the thing in a book that nobody else had noticed and then just holding it up and going, look at this. And everyone would look and go, oh, like she'd turned on a light in a room you didn't know was dark." Claire was listening. "She used to read to me," Noah said, "out loud, which I thought was strange at first. I'd never had anyone do that. But she said reading was better when it was shared, that some stories needed a second heartbeat in the room to really breathe." He paused. "I didn't understand what she meant until after." "After," Claire repeated. "After she was gone," he said. "I tried to read one of the books she loved. To feel close to her, I guess. And it just felt flat. Like a song playing in an empty house." Claire didn't say anything. She didn't have to. "She wanted so badly to be a mother," Noah said. That's the part that gets me. The part I can't put down. She wanted it more than anything. And she got 6 hours. His voice didn't break. He'd trained it. 6 months of training it, to deliver these facts without breaking. But something in his face changed. Some tightening at the jaw. Some shift around the eyes. "Emma looks like her," he said. "I know," Claire said. "You've told her that." He turned to look at her. "What?" "When you were walking with her in the aisle. I was watching. You were talking to her the whole time, you said." Claire paused. "You said you have her eyes. I heard you." He hadn't known anyone was listening. He swallowed. "I say it every morning," he said, "when she wakes up. I don't know why. Maybe so she knows. Even if she doesn't understand yet. Maybe so she hears her mother's name in her father's voice before she hears anything else." Claire's hand moved to Emma's back, pressing slightly. A small, deliberate pressure. "That's not nothing," Claire said quietly. That's everything." He looked out the window. He didn't trust himself to respond. The turbulence was gone now. The plane had found its smooth air again, and was moving through it with that particular steadiness that made it possible. For a few minutes at a time, to forget that you were hurtling through the atmosphere at 500 miles an hour inside a metal tube and instead feel like you were simply suspended somewhere above the ordinary world, above the ordinary weight of things. Noah had not felt suspended in 6 months. He had felt crushed. He had felt like a man standing in the middle of a house where every room needed something done to it, and he could only be in one room at a time, and the other rooms were always, silently, falling apart. He had felt like he was failing his daughter daily, and constantly, and in ways he could not fully identify, which was worse than failing in ways you could name. Because at least if you knew the specific problem, you could look it up. He could look anything up. That was what he did. He researched. He prepared. He created systems. But you could not research your way out of grief. You could not create a system for loneliness. "Can I ask you something?" Claire said. "Go ahead." "When was the last time someone did something for you?" she asked. "Not for Emma, for you." He thought about it. He actually tried to remember. He went back through the weeks, the pediatrician appointments, the grocery runs at 6 a.m. before Emma woke up, The dinners he'd eaten standing over the kitchen sink because sitting at the table felt too much like setting a place where someone wasn't anymore. His mother had come for 2 weeks after the funeral, and that had helped, but she'd had to go home. And then there was just the apartment and Emma and the silence. "I can't remember," he said. "That's what I thought," Claire said. It's not about me right now," he said. She needs you," Claire said. "All of you. Not the part of you that's running on nothing and calling it good enough." She said it without accusation. Like a fact. "I'm not criticizing, she exhaled. "My mother used to say that you can't pour from an empty cup." "My mother says that too," Noah said. "It's a thing people say because it's true," Claire said. "What's the answer though?" he said. "What do you actually do?" "Because I know it's true, and I still don't know what to do with it." Emma needs everything. She needs it constantly. There's not a pause button. There's not a shift change. It's just me. All the time. Just me. Claire was quiet. "You're doing it right now," she said. "Doing what?" "Letting someone else hold for a few minutes," Claire said. "Without having a plan. Without researching whether it was the right call." She looked at him directly. "You just said yes. That's the answer sometimes. Just saying yes when someone offers." He looked at her. He looked at Emma, sleeping against this woman's chest. He thought about the 47 minutes of trying. He thought about the coffee. He thought about the man with the newspaper, and the woman with the reading glasses, and the teenage boy with the headphones, and the thousands small judgments that had accumulated in that time, like static on a radio. And then he thought about the voice that had cut through it. "Excuse me." 2 words. The most ordinary 2 words in the world. "Why aren't you sleeping?" he asked. Claire looked at him. "I can't," she said. "Every time I close my eyes, I see the hospital room. I see my mother's hands." She looked down at Emma. She had the most beautiful hands. She used to cup my face in them when I was small. When I was sad. Just hold my face. Like she was reminding me it was real. That I was real. Her voice dropped. "I keep reaching for that, and there's nothing there." The plane hummed around them. Somewhere behind them, Sophie was asleep again. Somewhere ahead of them, whatever city they were landing in, was already arranging itself, the runway lights, the ground crews, the ordinary machinery of arrival waiting, without impatience, without judgment, for them to get there. "She sounds like she was remarkable," Noah said. "She was ordinary in the best way," Claire said. "She was just there. That was her great gift. She was always there. You never doubted it. And now she's not, and I don't know what to do with all this space." Noah nodded. He understood space. He understood the physics of absence, the way a person could occupy so much of the structure of your days that when they were gone, the whole architecture shifted. And you had to relearn how to move through rooms, how to eat, how to sleep, how to be a person who made plans and kept them. "You keep going," Noah said. "That's all I know how to tell you. You don't know how to keep going, and then you just do it anyway. Because you have Sophie, and she wakes up in the morning and she needs breakfast, and she needs you to be there. And that's enough?" Claire said. "Some mornings it's the only thing," Noah said. "Some mornings Emma wakes up and looks at me and reaches for my face, and I think, okay, today I do this because she needs me to. And then tomorrow I do it again. Does it stop feeling like barely surviving?" He thought about it honestly. "Not every day," he said. "But some days it feels like something else. Like you actually chose it. Like you're living it instead of just enduring it." Claire looked at him for a long moment. "I want to feel that," she said. "I want to feel like I chose it." "You will," he said. She looked at him skeptically. "You don't know that." "No," he said. "But neither do you. So neither of us knows it won't happen." He held her gaze. "That's where I live, right now. In the space between knowing it'll get better and knowing it won't get worse than this. That space is just big enough to stand in." Something shifted in her face. Something that had been tight and guarded since he'd first really looked at her. That persistent, careful composure she was wearing. The way you wore a coat over wet clothes shifted slightly. Gave a little. Emma stirred. Her eyes opened. She looked around with the confused, indignant expression of an infant who has been asleep and found the world unchanged upon waking, which was always somehow offensive to her. Then she looked at Claire. and Claire looked at her. And something passed between them, this baby and this grieving woman that Noah could not name, and did not try to. Some recognition, maybe. Some wordless understanding between two people who were both trying to find the shape of the world without someone who used to be in it. Emma reached up. She put her small open palm against Claire's cheek. Claire's breath caught so hard it was almost a sound. Her eyes went bright. She didn't cry. She held it together with a discipline Noah recognized from the inside. But her hand came up and covered Emma's hand gently, not pressing, just covering, and she stayed very still, like the moment was something she was afraid of breaking. Noah watched his daughter press her hand to a stranger's face the way she pressed it to his face every morning. He thought, she knows. He thought, she doesn't know anything. She's 6 months old. He thought, she knows. She does that to me, he said quietly. Every morning. Claire didn't move. She just nodded barely. I think, Noah said carefully, that she does it to make sure you know you're real. Claire closed her eyes. One tear went down her left cheek, quick and brief, and she caught it with her thumb before it got far. When she opened her eyes, she looked at him with something that was not quite gratitude and not quite recognition but lived somewhere between them. In the same space where he'd been standing, that space just big enough to stand in. I think I needed this flight, she said. Yeah, Noah said. He looked at her. He looked at Emma. He looked at the clouds, outside the window, still white and infinite and enormous, holding the plane, the way the plane was holding all of them, all their grief and their trying and their barely enough and their just keep going. Me too, he said. Sophie woke up at the exact wrong moment. Not wrong because anything bad happened. Wrong because the conversation between Noah and Claire had found a rhythm, a careful and fragile rhythm, the kind that builds between two people who have stopped performing and started actually talking. And Sophie's 4-year-old voice cut through it like a bell. Mama, I'm hungry. Claire turned immediately. The shift in her was instant, complete, the way mothers moved when their children spoke, like a compass finding north. Okay, baby. Give me 1 second. I want the crackers. I know, 1 second. She looked at Noah. I have to. Go, he said. Of course. But the logistics of it were suddenly complicated, because Emma was still in Claire's arms, and Emma was awake now, and awake meant the ceasefire was provisional. Noah stood up from 14A and reached over the seat back, and the exchange happened. Claire lifting Emma toward him, Noah taking her, both of them doing the careful handoff, with the practiced coordination of people who had been holding fragile things for years. And for just a moment, they were both holding Emma. At the same time, Noah's hands overlapping Claire's. Emma suspended between them, and nobody said anything about it. Noah took Emma back. Emma looked at him with those gray eyes. She didn't cry, he exhaled. Hey, Bug, he said quietly. Still here, still me. She reached for his collar. He sat back down in 14A and turned slightly, so he could still see Claire through the gap between the seats. She was digging through a bag, pulling out a small container of crackers, handing it to Sophie, who accepted it with the gravity of someone receiving something they had rightfully earned. The man in 14B had his newspaper up again, but the newspaper was not moving. The man was not turning pages. He was sitting still behind it, and Noah had the distinct impression, not for the first time, that the man was paying close attention to things he was pretending not to see. Noah didn't say anything. He bounced Emma gently on his knee and watched the clouds and listened to Sophie crunch crackers and thought about what Claire had said. That's everything. She'd said that about saying Sarah's name in the morning. That's not nothing. That's actually everything. He turned the words over in his mind, the way you turned over something you'd found on the ground and weren't sure yet if it was valuable or just something that looked like it was. He thought it was valuable. He thought he'd needed someone to say it. He thought he had not understood, until this flight, how much he had needed someone to say it. Can I ask you something? It was the man in 14B. Noah turned. The newspaper was down. The man was looking at him, directly for the first time since the coffee incident, and his expression was different from before, not warm. Exactly. But something had moved in it. Some layer of the professional irritation had shifted. Sure, Noah said, cautious. How old were you when you lost her? the man asked. Your wife. Noah looked at him. 34, he said. The man nodded slowly. He looked at Emma. My daughter lost her husband when she was 31, he said. 3 years ago. Different circumstances. But he stopped. He pressed his lips together. She has 2 kids. She's doing it by herself too. Noah said nothing. He waited. I didn't know what to do for her, the man said. He said it like it cost him something. Like the words had been sitting in a specific place for a long time, and he was only just deciding to move them. I kept trying to fix things. That's what I do. You tell me a problem. I find a solution. That's how I operated for 40 years in business. You figure out what's broken, and you fix it. He looked at Emma. You can't fix this. No, Noah said, you can't. I made it worse for a while, the man said, showing up with practical things. Grocery deliveries. Spreadsheets with their schedule. She finally told me, she said, Dad, I don't need you to fix it. I just need you to sit in the room with me. He paused. I didn't know how to do that. I'm still learning. Noah looked at him. The man picked up his newspaper. Then he put it down again. You're doing better than you think, he said gruffly. With her. He nodded at Emma. A man who didn't care wouldn't have walked that aisle 20 times. Noah didn't answer immediately. Thank you, he said finally. The man picked up the newspaper. This time he opened it. But the energy between them was different now, and both of them knew it, and neither of them mentioned it. And that was fine. Sometimes things didn't need to be discussed. Sometimes they just needed to happen. Claire's voice came from behind him. Okay. She's settled. He glanced back. Sophie had the crackers and the stuffed rabbit, and had arranged herself in 15A with the specific architectural precision of a 4-year-old building, her personal fortress. She looked set for the duration. She's good, Noah confirmed. She's always good, Claire said. That's the terrifying part. She's such an easy kid. I keep waiting for her to fall apart about all of this, and she just keeps going. She paused. Like she's better at it than I am. She's not better at it, Noah said. She's just smaller. The small ones haven't learned yet that grief is supposed to be heavy. They carry it differently. Claire considered this. When does it get heavy? When you understand what you lost, Noah said. When you can see the full shape of it. Sophie's going to understand eventually, Claire said. Yeah, he said. And when she does, you'll be there. What if I'm not? What if I don't know the right things to say? You won't, Noah said. Nobody does. But you'll say something. And she'll hear your voice, and that'll be the thing that matters. A beat. You've thought about this a lot, Claire said. I think about everything a lot, Noah said. It's the only tool I've got. Research and thinking. Sarah used to say I lived inside my head, like it was a house I'd renovated but never actually moved into. Claire laughed, a real one, fuller than before. And he heard Sophie look up at the sound of it. The automatic instinct of a child checking whether her mother's laugh was the good kind or the performed kind. Apparently satisfied, Sophie went back to her crackers. She's watching you, Noah said. She's always watching me, Claire said. Even when she's asleep, I think she's watching me. Emma watches me too, he said. She watched me cry once. 3 weeks in, I lost it. 2 in the morning, she was crying. I couldn't stop it. I couldn't figure out what was wrong. And I sat down on the bathroom floor, and I just went. I tried to turn away from her, but she was in my arms. So he stopped. She put her hand on my face. Exactly like she did to you. Claire was quiet for a moment. What did you do? She asked. I kept crying, he said, for about 30 more seconds. And then I got up and I walked her, and eventually she fell asleep. He paused. But I remember thinking, you're already taking care of me, and you're 3 weeks old. You're already looking at me and saying, I see you. And I thought, I have to deserve that. I have to deserve the way she looks at me. You do deserve it, Claire said. I'm working toward it, he said. That's the same thing, she said. Working toward something you need to deserve is the same as deserving it. Emma made a sound against his chest. Not unhappy, just present. Just reminding the room she existed, which he thought she might always do, might carry into her life the way some people carried a specific quality into every room, this insistence on being real, on being seen, Inherited maybe from the mother she would never remember, but whose eyes she wore every day. The pilot's voice came on. The easy, deliberate calm of pilots, who were trained to sound unaffected by everything. He announced. They were beginning their descent into Chicago. 40 minutes. 40 minutes. Noah felt it land in him differently than he'd expected. Not relief, exactly. More like the slight panic of someone who had found unexpected warmth and was now being told the warmth was time-limited. He heard Claire shift behind him. "Chicago," she said. "That's home." "Mine too," he said. She was quiet for a moment. "You live in Chicago." "Lincoln Park," he said. "You?" "Wicker Park," she said. "The coffee shop is in Wicker Park. I've been there 12 years. "I didn't know you were from Chicago," he said. "I didn't ask." "You were a little busy," she said. "Still," he said. "I should have asked." Another pause. Different from the earlier ones. This one had something in it that neither of them was quite willing to name yet. The specific quality of two people realizing they are not as finished with each other as the end of a flight would imply. "My mother wanted to expand," Claire said. And her voice had changed, slightly quieter. More careful, like she was stepping onto ground she hadn't tested yet. She had this whole plan. A second location. She'd been talking about it for years. "I always said we weren't ready. And then she got sick, and we definitely weren't doing it. And now, she stopped. Now, the whole plan is just sitting in a folder on her computer, and I can't open it." "Why not?" Noah asked. "Because if I open it, she wrote notes in it," Claire said. She wrote notes in everything. She had handwriting, like a teacher, very precise. And she wrote notes in every document and every folder. And if I open that file, I'll have to read what she wrote when she still thought it was going to happen. She stopped. "And I'm not ready for that." "You don't have to be ready," Noah said. "Eventually I have to open it," she said. "Eventually," he agreed. "Not today. Not today," she said. "Today I'm just trying to get home." "That's enough," he said. "Today getting home is enough." Sophie said, "Mama, can I have juice?" Claire said, "We're landing soon, baby." "Drink your water," Sophie said. "Water doesn't taste like anything." "That's what's good about it," Claire said. "That doesn't make sense," Sophie said. "It will when you're older," Claire said. Noah heard Sophie process this with a short sound that communicated clearly she found this unconvincing. He smiled. Emma grabbed his collar and pulled. "Okay," he said quietly to her. "I hear you." He shifted her to his shoulder and stood carefully. The seatbelt sign was off still, just barely, and walked her the 3 steps to the window and held her so she could see. Below them, through the gap in the clouds, he could see the pale geometry of the city beginning to appear. Blocks and streets, and the dark ribbon of the river. "Home." He pressed his lips to the top of Emma's head. "That's home, Bug," he said. "We made it." Emma looked out the window with those enormous gray eyes and did not seem particularly impressed by Chicago, but she also didn't cry, which at this point he was counting as a vote of confidence. He sat back down. The seatbelt sign chimed on. The descent began in earnest now. The subtle pressure change, the slight shift in the angle of everything, the sense of the world coming back up to meet them. "Noah." Claire's voice. "Yeah. I want to say something and I don't want it to come out wrong," she said. He turned slightly. "Go ahead. What happened on this flight?" she said. "What we talked about." "I don't." She paused, and he could hear her organizing the words carefully, the way you organized things that mattered. "I don't want you to think I do this. I don't talk to strangers on planes. I don't ask people about their dead wives. I don't." She stopped again. "This was different, and I don't know why yet. But I wanted to say that before we land, and it's just over." He looked at her through the gap between the seats. "I don't do this either," he said. "I don't talk, I research. I make lists. I solve problems." He paused. "I don't tell people about Sarah. I haven't told anyone anything in 6 months except my mother and my sister and my therapist, and even with them He shook his head. "I performed being okay. I showed up and said the right things, and then went home and was not okay." "What was different tonight?" she asked. "Today. On this flight." He thought about it honestly. "You didn't ask if I was okay," he said. "You just asked if you could help." She absorbed that. He looked at Emma. "And you didn't pity her. he said. When you held her. Some people hold her and you can see them, feeling sorry for her, this baby without a mother. You didn't do that. You just held her like she was a baby who needed holding. She is a baby who needed holding, Claire said. Yeah, he said. But a lot of people can't see past the story. Claire was quiet for a moment. My mother was like that, she said. She could see the thing itself without the story around it. She could look at a person and see the person, not the version of the person that the world had decided to make. She paused. I've always wanted to be like that. I don't know if I am. You are, Noah said. You barely know me, she said. I know what you did with the first 40 minutes you had of evidence, he said. That's enough. The plane shuddered slightly, the wings adjusting, the engines changing their pitch for the descent. Sophie made a small sound and reached for Claire's hand without looking up from the rabbit. Claire took it automatically, and Noah saw it happen, the way her grip closed around Sophie's hand with a completeness that had nothing to do with thought. That was just the body doing what the body knew, the oldest knowledge there was, the knowledge that came before language. He thought about Maggie. He thought about a woman he'd never met who had put too much coffee and had the best handwriting and cupped her daughter's face in her hands when she was sad. He thought about the folder on a laptop that Claire couldn't open yet. He thought about the second location that would never happen the way it was planned, but might happen a different way. If Claire ever got to the other side of the grief that was sitting on her chest right now like weather. Can I ask you something? He said. You keep asking permission, she said. You can just ask. The coffee shop, he said. Do you want to keep running it? A pause. Yes, she said, and then like it surprised her. Yes, I do. She seemed to sit with that for a moment. I didn't know that until right now. I've been asking myself for 4 days whether I could do it without her, whether I even wanted to, and she exhaled. Yes, I want to keep it. Because it's hers, and it's mine, and it's the thing we built together, and giving it up would be like losing her twice. Then you keep it, Noah said. Just like that? She said. You already knew the answer, he said. You just needed to hear yourself say it. Sophie had fallen back asleep. Her head had drifted against Claire's shoulder, the rabbit clutched to her chest, utterly indifferent to the mechanics of landing. Claire looked down at her with the expression Noah had seen on his own face, in the mirror sometimes, the expression that was love and exhaustion and protectiveness and terror all arranged into something that looked, from the outside, like pure peace. Emma was watching. She had her head turned, and she was looking at Sophie with the focused attention of a baby studying the world's most interesting object. She was completely still, which, for Emma, was unusual, and she had her mouth slightly open in the way she did when she was concentrating. She's watching Sophie, Noah said. Sophie's asleep, Claire said. Emma doesn't care, Noah said. She's studying her. He watched Emma's face. I think she's already planning something. Claire laughed quiet, careful not to wake Sophie. Planning what? She's 6 months old. Doesn't matter, Noah said. She's got the look. My mother says I had that look as a baby. Always watching. Always figuring things out. He paused. Sarah had it too. There are pictures of her as a kid where she's at family dinners, just watching the room. Like she was taking notes. And Emma has it, Claire said. Emma has it, he said. He said it with something in his voice that was not quite pride and not quite grief, but shared the DNA of both. The ache of recognizing someone you love in a face is still becoming itself. The unbearable tenderness of seeing a person arrive in the world, carrying pieces of someone who left it. The wheels came down with a mechanical thud. The city was close now. The buildings were individual things below them. Streets with cars, the particular flatness of the Midwest horizon, the lake gleaming at the eastern edge. Noah, Claire said. Yeah. A pause. She was working up to something. He could hear it in the way she breathed before she spoke. I have something, she said. In my bag. I was going to give it to. I don't know who I was going to give it to. My mother used to press them on everyone. She kept a stack at the register. Another pause. Can I give you something when we land? What is it? He asked. A card, she said. For the shop. She printed them herself. They're old-fashioned, the paper kind. She refused to do digital. because she said digital things disappeared and paper stayed. A beat. She's right about that, too. Okay, he said. You don't have to use it, Claire said quickly. It's just she would want. She stopped, started again. She would want someone to have it. I'll take it, Noah said. Just take it, she said. You don't have to do anything with it. He turned around and looked at her directly. Claire, he said. She looked at him. I'll take it, he said. And I'll do something with it. I don't know what yet, but something. She held his gaze for a moment, and something in her face did that thing again, gave that slight give, like a hand releasing something it had been holding too tightly. Okay, she said. The runway rose to meet them. The impact of landing came. That definitive thud, the rush of deceleration. The engines reversing. The world outside going from a blur to individual objects' runway lights. Ground crew vehicles. The edge of the terminal building. Sophie woke up. She looked around with the bewildered, slightly outraged expression of someone who had been asleep, and found the world had rearranged itself without her permission. Are we here? She asked. We're here, Claire said. Sophie looked at Emma. Emma looked at Sophie. For a moment they regarded each other across the space between the seats, the 4-year-old and the 6-month-old, with the complete seriousness of two people who have just been introduced and are deciding what to do about each other. Sophie reached out one small finger. She touched Emma's cheek. Emma grabbed the finger. Sophie looked at her hand, looked at Emma, looked at Claire. She's strong, she said, surprised. Babies are strong, Claire said. Why? Because they have to be, Claire said. She looked at Noah when she said it. He looked back. The plane taxied slowly toward the gate, and the ordinary sounds of arrival resumed around them. Phones coming on. Bags being unzipped. The murmur of conversations restarting. The world shaking itself back into its usual shape. The man in 14B folded his newspaper precisely into quarters and put it in his briefcase. He stood when the seatbelt sign went off and lifted his bag from the overhead bin. He looked at Noah. Safe travels, he said. You too, Noah said. The man looked at Emma. He reached out a brief, slightly awkward motion, like someone who didn't do this often, and touched Emma's hand with one finger. Emma looked at his finger with enormous eyes. The man cleared his throat. Then he moved into the aisle and was gone. Noah looked at Emma. Emma looked at him. People are weird, he said. She grabbed his collar. Yeah, he said. Me too. Claire was gathering her things behind him. He could hear her telling Sophie to wait, to stand still, to hold the rabbit in her hand, not under her arm, or they'd lose it again. He could hear Sophie explaining her own system for rabbit storage in great detail. He could hear, underneath all of it, Claire laughing real and small and exhausted and alive. He stood up. He got Emma into the carrier. She went in without protest, which was unusual enough that he paused for a moment, suspicious, and got the diaper bag and the white noise machine and everything else, organized with the efficiencies of someone who had done it 100 times, because he had. He stepped into the aisle. Claire was behind him, Sophie on her hip, the bag on her shoulder. She looked at him. He looked at her. They were back in the world now. The narrow temporary world of the airplane, where you told a stranger your wife's name and held their baby without being asked and said things out loud that you'd only ever said inside your own head. That world was closing. The gate was 30 feet away. Claire reached into the front pocket of her bag. She pulled out a small card, plain white. On it, in neat, slightly old-fashioned type, the Morning Cup, an address in Wicker Park, a phone number, and in the corner, in different ink, handwritten, not Claire's handwriting, he somehow knew immediately, but another hand, older, more certain, a small inscription, "Everyone is welcome here." He took the card. He looked at it for a moment. Maggie wrote that, he said. She wrote it on every single one, Claire said. He turned the card over. The back was blank. He looked at Claire. Thank you, he said. Thank her, Claire said. And she said it simply, without drama, the way you said something true when there was no better way to say it. Sophie tugged Claire's sleeve. Mama, I want to walk. 1 second, baby. I want to walk now, Sophie. Now, Mama. Claire looked at Noah. She gave him a look that said, this is what it is. This is the whole thing. This is what we do." He gave her a look back that said, "I know. I know exactly." "Go," he said. She went. He watched her walk up the jet bridge with Sophie's hand in hers, and Sophie's rabbit trailing from Sophie's other hand, and the bag on Claire's shoulder. And all of it, all the weight of the last 4 days. The funeral, and the grief, and the folder she couldn't open, and the mother's handwriting, and the second location, and the love that didn't have anywhere to land anymore. All of it going up that jetway, with her. He looked down at Emma. Emma looked up at him. She had her hand flat on his chest, over his heart. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I know." He held the card. He followed. He put the card in his wallet that same night. Not in the pocket of his jeans, where things got lost. Not in the diaper bag, where everything eventually disappeared into a kind of domestic black hole. In his wallet, behind his driver's license, in the slot where he used to keep a photo of Sarah before he moved the photo to the nightstand because he needed to see it more than he needed to carry it. He put the card there, like it was something he intended to keep. Then he went home and gave Emma a bath, and put her to bed, and stood in the kitchen for 20 minutes not eating anything. Just standing there with his hand on the counter, and the card in his wallet, in his jacket on the chair, and the apartment quiet. Around him the way it was always quiet. The specific quiet of a place where only one adult lived, and that adult was never quite sure what to do with silence. He thought about Claire. He thought about Maggie's handwriting. "Everyone is welcome here." He thought about Emma's hand on Claire's cheek. He went to bed. He did not sleep for a long time. 3 weeks passed. He drove past the Morning Cup on a Tuesday, entirely by accident. He was coming back from Emma's pediatrician appointment, taking a route he didn't usually take because of construction on Damen. And suddenly the shop was just there, a storefront he'd somehow never registered in 12 years of living in this city, with a hand-painted sign above the door and 2 small tables on the sidewalk, and a chalkboard in the window that said the daily special in handwriting he recognized immediately as the same handwriting that was on the card in his wallet. He slowed the car. He did not stop. Emma was in the car seat behind him, making the sound she made when she was on the edge of falling asleep, a rhythmic, drowsy sound, almost a hum. That required the car to keep moving or it would stop and she would wake up fully and the chance would be gone. He knew this about her. He knew the exact physics of her sleep, the way you knew the particular architecture of something you studied every single day. He kept driving. He told himself he would come back. He told himself that every day for 11 more days. On the 12th day, a Thursday, his sister called. Her name was Diane, and she was 4 years older than him, and had 2 kids of her own, and a husband who traveled for work, and a level of practical efficiency that Noah had always admired, and occasionally found slightly terrifying. She called at 7 in the morning, which meant she'd already been up for 2 hours. "I need you to tell me you're okay," she said, without preamble. "I'm okay," he said. "That was too fast," she said. When someone actually means it, they take at least a second. He was quiet. "Noah, I'm functioning," he said. "Is that better?" "It's honest," she said, which is different from better. "But I'll take it." He heard her moving around, the sound of her kitchen, the distant noise of her kids somewhere in the background. "Mom says you've been sounding strange on the phone." "I sound the same," he said. "You sound like someone pretending to sound the same," Diane said. "Which is different? What happened?" He thought about the flight. He thought about Claire. He thought about the card in his wallet, and the 11 days of driving past and not stopping, and the way Emma had put her hand on a stranger's face like she was checking whether the woman was real. "Nothing happened," he said. "Noah." "Something happened," he said. "But I don't know what to do with it yet, so I'm not talking about it." A pause. "Is it a person?" He said nothing. "It's a person," Diane said. "It's complicated," he said. "Everything is complicated," Diane said. "That's not a category. That's a description." Another pause, shorter. "Are you interested in someone?" "I don't know," he said. "Yes, you do," she said. "You always know. You just sometimes don't want to admit it, because knowing something means you have to do something about it." He looked at Emma, who was in her bouncy seat in the corner of the kitchen, conducting a focused investigation of her own fingers. "She helped me on a flight," he said, with Emma. Emma was screaming. And she offered to hold her, and Emma stopped, and we talked for the rest of the flight. And she told me about her mother, who just died. And I told her about Sarah, and she gave me a card for her coffee shop. He stopped. That's all. Silence on Diane's end. That's all? Diane said. That's all. You told a stranger about Sarah, Diane said. Yes. You haven't talked about Sarah to anyone except me and Mom and Dr. Kaufman in 6 months, Diane said. And you told a stranger on a plane. He didn't answer. Noah, she said. And her voice was different now. Softer. The edge of practicality giving way to something more careful. That's not nothing. That's you. That's you letting something in. He looked at Emma. Emma looked at her fingers. What if she doesn't remember me? He said. It came out before he'd decided to say it. Small and honest and slightly humiliating. Then you get a coffee and you leave and you tried, Diane said. That's how it works. You try. I don't know how to try, he said. I haven't tried anything in. I don't know how to do this, Di. I don't know the order of operations. There are no operations, she said. You walk through the door. That's the whole first step. Everything else comes after. He was quiet for a moment. She's running the shop alone, he said. Her mother built it with her. She doesn't know if she can do it. Then maybe she could use someone to walk through the door, Diane said. He put the phone down after that and sat for a while. Emma had fallen asleep in the bouncy seat, which was not ideal for her neck, but was a battle he had stopped fighting at week 14. He watched her sleep. He thought about Sarah. He thought about the last thing Sarah had ever said to him, which he thought about every day but rarely let himself say out loud because saying it out loud made it too real and too final and too much the shape of a door closing. She'd been in and out of consciousness. The doctors had been trying to explain things to him and he'd been holding her hand, and she'd opened her eyes and looked at him with those eyes that were Emma's eyes. That would always be Emma's eyes. And she'd said, "You're going to be so good at this." She hadn't said at being a father. She hadn't specified. She'd just said, at this. He'd always wondered what she meant. He wondered if maybe she'd meant something bigger than fatherhood. If maybe she'd seen, in the last clear moment she had, something in his future that he couldn't see yet. If maybe she'd been telling him, not just to take care of Emma, but to take care of himself, to keep going, to let things in. He pulled his wallet out of his pocket. He took out the card. He looked at it for a long time. Everyone is welcome here. He put it back. He got Emma into the stroller. He walked to the morning cup. It took him 22 minutes. He knew, because he counted them, the way he counted everything when he was nervous, when his body needed numbers to hold on to, while his mind did whatever it was doing. 22 minutes, 53 steps from the corner of Damen, 4 concrete cracks in the sidewalk, 1 near miss with a dog on a leash whose owner apologized with the specific Chicago directness he'd always loved about this city. He stood outside the door. The chalkboard said, "Today's special, the Maggie. Dark roast, extra shot, with something sweet on the side." He stared at that for a moment. He pushed the door open. The smell hit him first. Coffee. Real coffee. Not the artificial coffee-flavored air of chain places, but actual espresso. Dark and complex. And underneath it, something baked. Something warm. And underneath that, something he couldn't name, just the quality of a room that had been loved for a long time by people who meant it. There were 4 customers. A woman reading a book in the corner. 2 men talking over laptops. A teenager doing homework with headphones on. Behind the counter, a young woman he didn't recognize was working the espresso machine. He exhaled. Claire wasn't there. He told himself this was fine. He told himself he'd order a coffee, sit down, be a normal person in a coffee shop, and go home. No drama, no significance, just a man getting coffee. He ordered the Maggie. "Good choice," the young woman said. "Claire's special. She made it up the week after her mom passed." He took the cup. He sat at a small table near the window. He was on his second sip when the door to the back opened and Claire walked out. She had her hair up and she was holding a clipboard and she was talking to someone behind her, a delivery person. From what Noah could see, clipboard versus clipboard. the negotiation of invoices, and she hadn't looked up yet, and for approximately 4 full seconds, Noah sat completely still and thought very seriously about whether there was a dignified way to leave a coffee shop through the window. There wasn't. Claire looked up. She saw him. The clipboard came down 2 inches. She stood, completely still for a moment, the way people stood when they were doing rapid internal calculations and hadn't decided on an output yet. Then she said something to the delivery person, handed off the clipboard, and crossed the room. She stopped at his table. She looked at him. She looked at the cup in his hand. "You got the Maggie," she said. "The board said it was today's special," he said. "I put it on the board every Thursday," she said. Thursday was her day off. She'd come in anyway. She always came in anyway, she just couldn't stay away. But she'd come in on Thursdays for one specific cup and then go home. A pause. It seemed like the right day. He held up the cup slightly. "It's good." "I know," she said. "It was her recipe." She looked at him. "You came, I did," he said. "You waited a while," she said. He was surprised. "You counted?" "I didn't count," she said. I noticed you hadn't." She said it simply, without accusation, just the fact of it. "I thought maybe you wouldn't." "I almost didn't," he said. "A lot of times." She pulled out the chair across from him. She looked at it. She looked at him. He nodded. She sat. "Where's Emma?" she said. "With my sister," he said. "First time." Diane basically had to physically remove her from my arms, but she did it. He paused. "I had nothing to do with my hands for the first 20 minutes of the walk here." Claire smiled at that. "The real one, the one that reached." "How was that?" "Terrifying," he said. "I kept thinking I'd forgotten something. Something important. Like I'd left the stove on, except the stove was a person." "You always feel like that," she said. "The first 20 times you leave them. And then one day you realize you went a full hour without checking your phone. And it's fine, and they're fine. And you feel guilty for a second that you forgot to feel guilty. And then you realize that that's what normal feels like." "When does that happen?" he asked. "Different." "For everyone," she said. "For me it was about 7 months in." She stopped. "You're close." He looked at her. "How are you?" he asked. And he said it the way she'd taught him to say it, without knowing she'd taught him anything, which was without the automatic expectation of fine, without the social contract that said the question was courtesy, and the answer should be brief. She heard the difference. She sat with it for a moment. "Some days are bad," she said. "Some days I open the door, and she's not here, and it hits me like the first time, like I didn't know, like I have to learn it again." She looked at the counter. "And some days I make her coffee and put it on the board and feel her everywhere in this room, and it's almost enough." Almost. She brought her eyes back to him. "Sophie asked me yesterday where heaven is." "What did you tell her?" he asked. "I told her it was wherever the people who love you keep you," Claire said. "In here." She touched her chest briefly. She thought about it for about 10 seconds, and then said, "Okay," and went back to her cereal. "That's a good answer," he said. "It was my mother's answer," Claire said. "She told me that when my grandfather died. I was 9. I've been carrying it around for 20-something years, waiting for the right time to use it." He looked at her. "She's still teaching you things," he said. Claire's breath moved in a specific way, not quite a gasp, not quite a sigh. Something between them. "Yeah," she said. "I guess she is." The espresso machine hissed behind the counter. The woman reading the book turned a page. Outside, someone walked past the window with a dog, and both of them watched it for a moment without meaning to. The way your eyes followed movement. "Can I ask you something?" Noah said. "Still asking permission," she said. "Habit," he said. "The folder. The second location. Have you opened it?" She looked at him. "How did you remember that?" "I remember everything," he said. "It's a problem." She was quiet for a moment. Her hands wrapped around a cup of her own. He hadn't noticed her bring it, but it was there, steaming. "I opened it 2 days ago," she said. He waited. "She had notes," Claire said. "Like I knew she would. Everywhere. Little margin notes, the way she used to annotate books. Things like this wall could be yellow. Maggie always liked yellow." And she stopped. She pressed her lips together once. She wrote a note at the top of the main document that said, "For Claire, who always thinks she's not ready. She's always ready. She just needs someone to tell her. The room was very quiet for a moment. She wrote it for you, Noah said. She wrote it before she got sick, Claire said. Before we knew anything. She knew me. She knew I'd sit on it too long. She pre-answered my objection. A short, wet sound that wasn't quite a laugh. Even now, she's pre-answering my objections. He looked at his cup. Are you going to do it? He asked. I don't know, she said. Maybe. She looked at him. Probably. Eventually. She exhaled slowly. I think I needed to open the folder first. The rest comes after that. He nodded. The rest always comes after the first thing, he said. What was your first thing? She asked. He thought about it. Walking through that door, he said. She looked at him. He looked at her. It was a moment that had weight to it. Real weight, the kind you felt in your chest, rather than thought about in your head. Not romantic, not yet. Not the word he would use, it was more fundamental than that. More like recognition. The way you recognized a landscape you'd never been to, but had somehow always known, was there, waiting. I'm glad you did, she said. Me too, he said. His phone buzzed. He looked at it. Diane. He held it up so Claire could see the name. Go, Claire said, he answered. Is she okay? She's perfect, Diane said. She's asleep on my chest, and I'm not moving until she wakes up, and I want you to know, I finally understand why you never get anything done. You can't put her down, he exhaled. I told you. You told me, Diane agreed. Take your time, we're good. He put the phone in his pocket. Claire was watching him with an expression that was both amused and something soft unofter underneath the amusement. Everything okay? She's asleep on my sister, he said. My sister is learning the physics of it. It takes a while, Claire said. Everything takes a while, he said. He picked up his cup. He took a sip. He set it down. I want to keep coming here, he said. If that's okay. She looked at him steadily. It's a coffee shop, she said. Everyone is welcome here. She said it lightly. But she was watching his face when she said it, and he was watching hers. And they both knew she wasn't just reading from the card. He came back the following Thursday. And the Thursday after that. And the one after that. It was never planned. Or rather, it was always planned. The same simple way. He would put Emma in the stroller on Thursday morning and walk to Wicker Park and order the Maggie and sit at the table by the window. Sometimes Claire was there. Sometimes she was in the back. Sometimes she came out and sat with him for 20 minutes between the morning rush and lunch. Sometimes Sophie was there, released early from preschool, conducting her own investigation of the shop with the systematic thoroughness of a very small health inspector. Sophie had decided she liked Emma. This was not a minor development. Sophie had, according to Claire, very strong opinions about who she liked, and she communicated these opinions clearly and without diplomacy. She had decided, on the second Thursday, that Emma was acceptable, and she demonstrated this by bringing Emma a specific toy, a small rubber duck that was apparently a significant artifact from Sophie's personal collection, and placing it on the tray of Emma's stroller, with the gravity of someone presenting a state gift. Emma had grabbed it immediately and put it in her mouth. Sophie had watched this with narrowed eyes. She can borrow it, Sophie said. Not keep it. Understood, Noah said. I want it back, Sophie said. I'll make sure of it, Noah said. Sophie seemed satisfied. She went back to her drawing. Claire, watching from behind the counter, had caught Noah's eye and had to look away quickly because she was laughing and didn't want Sophie to see. That was the first time Noah thought, this is good. This specific thing. This Thursday thing. This is actually good. He held on to that thought carefully. The way you held something you weren't sure how to carry yet. He didn't push it. He didn't analyze it the way he usually analyzed everything. He just let it exist and came back to it, and let it be whatever it was without demanding it be more or less. On the fifth Thursday, Claire sat down and didn't get back up for 2 hours. The shop had emptied after the morning rush, and her employee, a college student named Marcus, who was earnest and spilled things constantly, and was, Claire said, exactly who she'd been at 21, had everything under control, and she sat across from Noah and they talked. They talked the way people talked when they'd stopped being careful about it. Not performing, Not managing impressions. Just talking. One thing leading to another. Stories pulling out other stories. He told her about the first time he'd given Emma a bath alone. How he'd watched approximately 11 YouTube videos beforehand and had still almost dropped her and had ended up sitting on the bathroom floor afterward with a very wet, very confused baby, and had laughed for the first time since Sarah died. Actually laughed. Not the courtesy kind. Claire told him about the morning after Maggie's funeral when she'd woken up and made 2 cups of coffee on autopilot and had stood in the kitchen for 3 full minutes before realizing what she'd done and then had drunk both cups. Because she wasn't going to waste her mother's coffee. She said it like it was a small thing, and then her eyes went bright and she looked away, and Noah understood that the smallest things were never small. He told her about the notebook. He hadn't told anyone about the notebook. After Sarah died, he'd started keeping a notebook of things he wanted Emma to know about her mother. Not big things. He figured the big things would come naturally, would be the shape of how he talked about Sarah as Emma grew up. But the small things, the things that would get lost. The way Sarah laughed when something was genuinely funny, not the polite laugh, but the real one, which came out a little too loud and always surprised her. The way she said the word particularly with emphasis on the second syllable in a way that was slightly wrong, but completely her own. The way she kept plants alive through what Noah was convinced was sheer emotional investment, talking to them in the morning while she made coffee. The fact that she cried at commercials, but not at sad movies, which she said was because movies gave you time to prepare your defenses, and commercials hit you when your guard was down. He'd written all of it, pages of it, things that had no category except true. Claire had listened to every word. When he finished, she said, "Can I tell you something?" "Yes," he said. "My mother kept a journal," she said. "She kept it for 40 years. I found it in the shop, in the back, in a box I thought was old receipts." She stopped. "I haven't opened it either. 2 things I haven't opened. The folder and the journal." "Which one are you closer to opening?" he asked. She thought about it. "The journal," she said. "Which is strange, because it's the scarier one." "Why is it scarier?" "Because the folder is her plans," Claire said. "Her plans for the future. But the journal is her. The whole thing. What she actually thought. What she was afraid of. What she loved." She looked at her hands. "I keep thinking, what if she wrote things I didn't know? What if she had a whole life in there I didn't see? What if I didn't know her as well as I thought?" She paused. "And then I think, what if I did? What if every page is just her exactly as I knew her, and I have to say goodbye to her all over again?" Noah was quiet. "You open it," he said. "Because either way it's her. Either way you get more of her. And more of her is better than none." Claire looked at him. "Is that what you'd want?" she asked. "If there was more of Sarah? If there was something you hadn't seen yet, would you want to find it?" He answered immediately, without hesitation. "Yes, even if it hurt," she said. "Especially then," he said. "Because the hurt means she was real. The hurt is the proof." Something moved across Claire's face, not grief exactly, but the shape grief made when it was shifting into something else, when it was becoming part of the architecture of a person, rather than just the weight on top of them. She reached across the table. She put her hand over his. She didn't say anything. He didn't say anything either. Emma, in her stroller beside the table, made a small satisfied sound and grabbed her own foot, which she had recently discovered was attached to her, and found this both surprising and delightful. Sophie appeared from behind the counter where she'd been drawing. She put her drawing on the table. It was 4 figures. 2 tall, 2 small. They had circular heads and stick arms, and the taller ones were holding the hands of the smaller ones. Under it, in the uncertain large letters of a child who had been learning to write, Sophie had written, U.S. Claire stared at it. Noah stared at it. Sophie said, "It's us. Me and Mama and Emma and Noah." Neither of the adults said anything for a moment. "Sophie," Claire said carefully, "did you draw this today?" "Yes," Sophie said. "I made us 4. Because we're 4 now." She picked up the drawing and considered it critically. "I'm going to add a dog," she announced, and took it back behind the counter. Noah looked at Claire. Claire's hand was still over his. 4, he said quietly. "She's 4, Claire said. She's just counting." But her hand didn't move, and neither did his. He looked out the window at the street, at the ordinary Chicago Thursday going about its business. People walking dogs and pushing strollers and carrying coffee cups. The whole ongoing machinery of regular life in regular motion. He thought about Sarah. He thought, I'm still here. We're still here. Emma and me. He thought, I think you'd like this. This specific Thursday. I think you'd look at it and say yes. Yes, this is good, he thought. I'm learning to think that too. Claire's hand moved. Just slightly, just a small adjustment, so that her fingers were between his fingers instead of on top of them. He looked at her. She was looking at Emma. Emma was chewing her foot. She's going to be something, Claire said. Yeah, Noah said. She is. He looked at their hands. He did not analyze it. He did not research it. He just held on. Sophie opened the journal on a Sunday. Not Claire. Sophie. It happened the way the most important things happened. Without announcement, without preparation. In the middle of an ordinary morning, when the defenses were down, and the careful systems built around their most fragile things had simply not been engaged yet, because nobody had known they needed to be. Claire had been in the back of the shop. It was before opening, 8 in the morning, the specific quiet of a place that was about to be full of people, but wasn't yet. Marcus had called in sick. Noah had come early to help. He'd started doing that on Sunday mornings, showing up at 7:45 with Emma in the carrier and a willingness to do whatever needed doing, which usually meant restocking cups and running the register, while Claire handled the espresso machine. Because he'd tried the espresso machine once and Claire had watched him do it with the expression of a surgeon, saw someone perform an operation with gardening tools. Sophie had been at the small table in the corner that Claire had set up as hers, a low table with her drawings and her crayons, and the stuffed rabbit and whatever book she was currently carrying around. She was supposed to be drawing. Instead, she had found the journal. Claire had left it on the counter the night before. She'd taken it out of the box she'd moved 3 times in 2 months without opening, from the back room to the office, to the shelf behind the register, and she'd put it on the counter, because she'd decided, finally, that tonight was the night. She'd made herself a cup of tea. She'd sat down. She'd put her hand on the cover. And then Marcus had called about being sick and she'd spent 40 minutes handling logistics. And by the time she was done, the tea was cold, and the moment had passed and she'd left the journal on the counter and told herself tomorrow. Sophie had found it in the morning. She'd carried it to her table with the matter-of-fact confidence of a child who did not yet understand that some objects were minefields. She'd opened it to the first page. She couldn't read cursive. She was 4.5. But she was looking at it very carefully, running one small finger along the lines of her grandmother's handwriting. And when Claire came out of the back and saw her, Claire stopped so completely that Noah, who was behind the register, looked up at her face and put down what he was holding. Sophie, Claire said. Her voice was very controlled. Where did you get that? Sophie looked up. She looked at her mother's face, and something in the 4-year-old recalibrated quickly, the way children recalibrated, when they understood they had crossed a line without seeing it. The counter, she said. I was just looking. Can you bring it to me, please? Sophie carried it over with both hands, careful now, as if she could feel the weight of it differently than she had a moment ago. She handed it to Claire. Claire held it. She didn't open it. She just stood there holding it with both hands, and Noah watched her, and didn't say anything, and didn't move, and let the moment be whatever it needed to be. Sophie said, Whose writing is that? Grandma Maggie's, Claire said. Sophie was quiet for a moment. What does it say? I don't know yet, Claire said. Sophie thought about this. Are you going to read it? Claire looked down at her daughter. Sophie was looking up at her with those brown eyes, her father's eyes, completely open, no agenda, just the pure question of a child who wanted to understand something. Yes, Claire said. I'm going to read it. Can I listen? Sophie asked. Some of it, Claire said. When you're older, some of it. Sophie accepted this negotiation with a small nod. Okay, she said. Can I have a muffin? Noah, from behind the register, said, I'll get it. And something about the ease of that, the way he just moved to handle the small practical thing, so Claire didn't have to. The way he'd learned the geography of this shop and this family well enough to know which things he could carry made Claire look at him with an expression that was gratitude, and something beyond gratitude. Something that didn't have a clean word for it, but lived in the same place that all the real things lived. She took the journal to the back. She came out 30 minutes later with red eyes and a steadiness that was different from the kind she'd had before. Not performed steadiness. Not the coat over wet clothes. The real kind, the kind that came from having looked at something hard and found that you could bear it. Noah was behind the register. Emma was in the playpen he'd started keeping in the corner, another gradual development. One of 100 small adjustments that had accumulated without being named: the playpen and the extra chair and the hook for the diaper bag, and the fact that Marcus knew Emma's name and asked about her. "Tell me," Noah said. Claire leaned on the counter. She looked at the wall behind him for a moment. At the framed photographs, the shop over the years, Maggie at different ages, Claire at different ages, the two of them together, in front of the sign when they'd first opened, young and terrified and grinning. "She wrote about me," Claire said. "The whole first section is just me. Things I did that she was proud of. Things I said when I was young that she wanted to remember." She stopped. She wrote about the day I told her I wanted to run the shop with her. I was 19. I thought she'd say I was too young, that I should finish school first, that I should think about it. Instead, she just said, finally. She'd been waiting. Claire's voice caught slightly. She pressed on. She wrote that the best thing she ever did was have me. And the second best thing was letting me find my own way into things instead of pushing me. Noah didn't say anything. She knew me, Claire said. She saw me clearly, and she wrote it all down, and she knew me. She looked at him directly now. I was so afraid she had a whole life I didn't see. And she did. She had her fears and her doubts, and the things she didn't tell me. But the way she saw me, it matched. It matched what I thought she saw. She exhaled slowly. She wasn't a stranger. She was exactly who I thought she was. "What did you think you'd find?" Noah asked carefully. "I don't know," Claire said. Something that made her smaller. Something that changed the story. She shook her head. "Instead, I found her. Just her. Writing about sugar in her coffee and difficult suppliers, and watching me handle a difficult customer for the first time when I was 22, and thinking, she's got it, and she doesn't even know it yet." Noah was quiet for a moment. "She knew," he said. "She always knew," Claire said. Sophie appeared from her table with a crayon in each hand, looking between them with the alert expression of a child who had identified an emotional frequency and was deciding whether to engage with it. "Mama," she said. "Yeah, baby. Was Grandma Maggie nice?" Claire looked at her. "She was the nicest," she said. "Nicer than Noah?" Noah raised an eyebrow. Sophie looked at him with great seriousness. "Different nice," Claire said. "Noah is nice in a Noah way. Grandma was nice in a grandma way." Sophie appeared to find this philosophically acceptable. "Okay," she said. She went back to her table. Noah looked at Claire. Claire looked at him. "She ranks people," Claire said. "I noticed," he said. "You're in the rankings," she said. "I know," he said. "I'm trying not to read too much into it." "You're above Marcus," Claire said. "Significantly above Marcus?" he asked. "She let you hold the rabbit twice," Claire said. "Marcus has never been offered the rabbit." He considered this. "That seems significant." "It is significant," Claire said. "Sophie has a hierarchy, and the rabbit is the metric." Emma, from the playpen, made a loud declarative sound that had no specific meaning but communicated clearly that she felt she was being left out of the conversation. Both of them looked at her. Emma looked back with enormous gray eyes and the expression of someone who had made a point and expected it to be addressed. "We hear you," Noah said. Emma grabbed the rubber duck, Sophie's rubber duck, the loaned one, which had become a permanent fixture in Emma's possession through the kind of gradual transfer that Sophie had approved, and then pretended she hadn't, and held it up. "Very good," Noah said. Emma looked at the duck. She looked at him. She looked at Claire. She looked back at the duck. "She's doing the thing," Claire said. "What thing?" "The thing where she processes the room," Claire said. "She does it every time she comes in. She checks everyone. Make sure we're all where she put us." He looked at his daughter. "She does," he said. He hadn't noticed it as a pattern before. He noticed it now. Emma had been doing that for months. The systematic check, the sweep of the room, landing on each person in turn, and only settling when she'd confirmed their presence. He'd thought it was just attention, baby attention, the random focus of a developing brain. But it wasn't random. It was deliberate. She was counting them. She was making sure they were all there. He thought about Sarah. He thought, she learned that from me. I've been doing that her whole life. Counting. Making sure, he thought. Or maybe she was born knowing it. Maybe that's what you do when you enter the world without someone who was supposed to be there. You learn immediately to count the ones who are. His throat tightened. He looked away. The first customer of the day came through the door. They went to work. 6 weeks after that Sunday, Claire opened the second location. It was not a dramatic thing. It was a Thursday. It was always a Thursday their day, and Claire had been on the phone for 2 hours in the back and had come out looking like someone who had just jumped off something tall and found the landing softer than expected. She'd walked to Noah's table and sat down and put her phone face down and looked at him. "I signed the lease," she said. He put down his cup. "On the second location," she said. "The one in my mother's folder." She said it carefully, like the words were something she was still getting used to carrying. "Andersonville. There's a space that just opened up. Good Bones. Near the L." Exactly what her notes described. She paused. "I called the landlord last week. I've been going back and forth. I signed it an hour ago." He looked at her for a moment. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Like I'm going to throw up," she said. "And like she's standing right behind me with her hand on my shoulder." She exhaled. Both at the same time. "That sounds right," he said. "Does it? Every good decision I've ever made felt exactly like that," he said. Terrifying and absolutely correct simultaneously. She looked at him across the table. "You're sure?" "I'm sure you know what you're doing," he said. "I've watched you run this place for 5 months. You know what you're doing." "My mother knew what she was doing," Claire said. "Your mother taught you," he said. "And she wrote it all down. In a journal. In a folder. In handwriting on every single card she printed." He looked at her directly. "You have her notes. You have her recipe. You have everything she left you. Now you build something with it." Claire looked at him for a long moment. Then she said, "I need to tell you something." Something in her tone changed. Not bad, but serious. The register of someone who had decided to say a true thing and was organizing themselves for it. "Okay," he said. "When I sat down on that plane," she said, "I was not in good shape. I mean, I was functional. I had Sophie, I was managing. But I was running on nothing, and I knew it, and I was telling myself I could keep running on nothing indefinitely because I didn't have another option." She paused. "And then I watched you walk that aisle for 40 minutes, and I thought, that's it. That's what it looks like. That's someone who has been running on nothing. For so long they don't remember what something feels like." She looked at her hands. "And I thought, if I can give that person 5 minutes of something, I should do it." He listened. "But here is what I didn't expect," she said. "I thought it would be a one-way thing. I thought I would do a small good thing and feel slightly less useless, and that would be the whole transaction." She looked up. "And instead, you asked me about my mother. You asked me to tell you something about Maggie. Nobody had done that. And I told you about the sugar in the coffee, and I felt her. I felt her come back for a second, just enough." She stopped. "You gave me my mother back for 60 seconds on a plane over Illinois. And I've been trying to figure out how to say that since." Noah didn't answer for a moment. Emma was asleep in the stroller. Sophie was drawing. The shop smelled like coffee and something baked, and the years of warmth that a loved room accumulated, the way wood took on the smell of fire, gradually, permanently, without announcement. "You didn't get on that plane to help me," he said. "But you helped me." "I know," she said. "And I didn't walk through that door to give you anything," he said. "But maybe I did." "You did," she said. He looked at her. "I think about Sarah differently now," he said. And he said it carefully, the way he said things that were still becoming their final shape. "Not less." He shook his head. "She's not smaller. She'll never be smaller. But I think about her differently. I talked to Emma about her differently." Before, he paused. Before I talked about her, like I was preserving her, like I was keeping her behind glass. And now, I talk about her, like she's still in the room. Like she's part of what happens next, not just what happened before. Claire nodded slowly. My mother is in this coffee shop, she said. She's in the recipes and the handwriting on the cards and the ratio of the Maggie and the yellow wall I'm going to paint in Andersonville. Because she wrote a note that said this wall could be yellow. She looked around the room. She's not behind glass. She's in the walls. In the walls, he said. In the walls, she said. Emma stirred. She opened her eyes. She did the thing, the sweep, the count. She found Noah. She found Claire. Her eyes moved to Sophie. She found Sophie. She settled. Everyone was there. She reached for the duck. Then something happened that neither of them expected. Emma started humming. It was barely a sound. It was the sound a baby made when they were content and vocal, when the world felt right and the body expressed it spontaneously. But it was pitched and rhythmic, and it was Noah went completely. Still, it was the melody. The one from the plane. The one Claire had hummed to stop Emma from crying. The old lullaby. The one that had come from Maggie, passed down without words. Just the melody traveling forward through the generations like a current through water. Emma was humming it. Badly, softly, imprecisely. But it was there, the shape of it. The rise and fall. The specific pattern that was not generic, but was that song. That particular song. Claire's hand stopped moving. She went absolutely still. She looked at Emma. Emma hummed. She didn't know she was doing anything remarkable. She was just making sound, because the world felt safe, and she was happy, and the sound wanted to come out. She remembers it, Noah said. His voice came out low, almost not there. Claire couldn't speak. She was looking at Emma with the expression he'd seen on her face once before, on the plane, when Emma had put her hand on Claire's cheek. That expression of someone standing at the intersection of impossible and true, not sure yet which direction to go, only sure that they were standing somewhere they had never stood before. She hears it when I put her to bed, Noah said. I looked up the melody after the flight. I found it. I learned it. He stopped. I've been singing it to her at night. Because it worked. On the plane it worked, and so I kept using it. He looked at Claire. I didn't know it was your mother's song. Claire found her voice. How did you find it? I hummed what I remembered into a search bar, he said. It's an old standard. Old enough that there are a dozen versions. He paused. I just knew it worked. I didn't know where it came from. Claire was very still. My mother sang it to me, she said. Her mother sang it to her. I don't know how far back it goes. I learned it before I could remember learning it. She looked at Emma. And now she knows it. Emma hummed. The melody moved through the shop, small and imperfect and real, just a baby making sound, just the oldest human instinct expressing itself, just a song that had passed through how many throats, how many women rocking, how many children, how many dark rooms where someone needed settling. Sophie looked up from her drawings. She listened for a moment. I know that song, Sophie said. I know you do, Claire said. Grandma used to sing it, Sophie said. She did, Claire said. Sophie nodded. She went back to her drawing. As if the continuity of it was obvious, was a matter of fact, was simply the way things worked. The songs kept going. The people changed. The melody remained. Noah looked at Claire. Claire looked at him. Her eyes were bright, but she didn't look away. She's still here, Claire said. Not a question. Not hoping. Saying it like a thing she knew, now that she hadn't known an hour ago. She's still here, Noah said. It sat between them. That sentence, solid and real. 6 months later, Noah stood in front of a yellow wall in Andersonville. It was opening day for the second location. Claire had painted the accent wall yellow 3 weeks earlier, exactly as the note had said. And when Noah had first seen it, he'd had to stand in the doorway for a moment. Not because it was surprising, he'd known it was coming, but because it was so completely, obviously right. Sophie had said, Grandma Maggie would like this. Claire had said, she picked it. Sophie had said, I know with the certainty of a child for whom this was a simple fact rather than a complicated truth. Emma was on Noah's hip. She was 8 months old now, sitting up on her own, grabbing at everything within reach, conducting a continuous investigation of the physical world with a focus and determinations that seemed to belong to someone considerably older. She had 4 teeth. She had discovered that she could make sounds that were almost words, almost language, and she was using this discovery constantly, narrating her own experience in a running commentary that Noah found both exhausting and magnificent. She was grabbing at the yellow wall. Not for eating, Noah told her. Emma looked at the wall. She looked at him. She reached for the wall again. I know, he said. I know. It's a great wall. You can appreciate it without eating it. Claire appeared beside him, with a coffee in each hand. She gave him one. He took it. How does it feel? He asked. She looked around the room, the space that had been empty 6 months ago. That was now full, already full. People who'd followed Claire from Wicker Park, and people who'd never been, and people who'd seen the sign and walked in off the street. Marcus was behind the counter, less likely to spill things now, moving with a competence that had grown month by month. A new employee, a woman named Dara, was working the room with a warmth that reminded Noah a little of what he imagined Maggie had been like. It feels like hers, Claire said, and mine, at the same time. That's the point, he said. That's the point, she said. Emma grabbed Claire's sleeve. Claire looked down at her. Emma looked up at Claire with those gray eyes and said, with enormous seriousness and zero ambiguity, one clear syllable, Ma. The room didn't stop. The espresso machine kept going. Sophie, across the room with her rabbit and a new set of crayons, didn't look up. The customers talked. The world did what the world did. But Noah stopped. And Claire stopped. And the word hung in the air between them, said by a baby who did not understand its full weight, who was only experimenting with sound and meaning and the specific power of calling out to the person you needed most. Emma said it again. Ma, her hand still on Claire's sleeve, her eyes on Claire's face. Claire looked at Noah. He looked at her. His first instinct, he felt it move through him, and recognized it, and let it move through him, and did not grab it. His first instinct was grief, the grief that said, Sarah should be here for this. Sarah should be the one. He let it pass. And what was on the other side of it was something that he didn't have a word for yet, but that felt like the conversation he'd been having with Sarah in his head for 8 months. The ongoing conversation he had with her, every morning when Emma opened her eyes, and every evening when Emma closed them. He thought, I think you sent her. He thought, I think you knew I needed someone who wasn't afraid of the weight of things. He thought, I think you picked her. He thought, I think you're still in this room. I think you're in the yellow wall and the melody Emma hums at night, and the way Emma reaches for people's faces to check whether they're real. He thought, I think that's enough. I think that's everything. Emma said, Ma, one more time, and then moved on to investigating a button on Claire's shirt, satisfied, or perhaps just done with that particular experiment for now. Claire exhaled slowly. She looked at Noah. I don't want to get ahead of anything, she said. Her voice was careful. I know what that means and what it doesn't mean. I know, he said. I'm not trying to be, she stopped. Started again. She has a mother, she does, he said. She always will. I'm not replacing anything, Claire said. You're not replacing anything, he said. You're adding. There's a difference. Claire looked at Emma. Emma had lost interest in the button and was now leaning towards Sophie across the room with the focused ambition of someone who had identified a destination and was working on the logistics of getting there. You know what I think? Noah said. Tell me. I think Sarah would have liked you, he said. Specifically. I've thought about it a lot. I know how she worked. She liked people who told the truth and didn't perform and did the quiet thing instead of the impressive thing. He paused. You held a stranger's baby on a plane because it was the right thing to do, and you needed to do something that mattered. She would have understood that immediately. Claire was quiet for a moment. What would she have said? Claire asked. If she could. He thought about it. He thought about Sarah's voice, and Sarah's way with words. The English teacher in her, the person who found the thing nobody else had noticed, and held it up and said, look at this. She would have said, he said slowly, that the people who come into your life after the worst thing are not accidents. She believed that. She thought the universe was lousy with meaning if you were willing to look for it. He paused. And then she would have said something that was too smart and a little bit funny and would have taken me 3 days to fully understand. Claire smiled. Like what? She said. Like, she said, you can't replace a chapter, but you can start a new one. And the new one doesn't erase the old one. It just means the book keeps going. Claire looked at him. She sounds like she was a great teacher, she said. She was, he said. Still is. Sophie appeared at their feet, having navigated the room with the efficiency of a child on a mission. She was holding her drawing pad. She held it up. 4 figures. The same 4 figures from Wicker Park, from months ago. Too tall, too small. But this time they were standing in front of something. A building. A building with a yellow wall, colored carefully in yellow crayon, and a door. And above the door, 2 words that Sophie had asked Noah to help her spell 3 weeks ago when she'd started the drawing. That Noah had spelled out, letter by letter, that Sophie had copied onto the page in large, uneven, completely legible capitals. The morning. She hadn't fit cup, but she'd gotten the most important part. Noah looked at it. He looked at Claire. He looked at Sophie, who was watching them both with the earnest expectation of someone who had made something, and wanted to know if it was right. It's perfect, Noah said. Sophie looked critically at the yellow wall, and then at her drawing. I made it the right color, she said, satisfied. You did, Claire said. Her voice was steady. She'd made it steady. But she reached down and pulled Sophie against her side with the completeness of that grip, the compass finding north grip, and Sophie leaned into it without looking up from the drawing. Emma, from Noah's hip, reached toward Sophie's drawing. Sophie held it slightly higher. You can look, Sophie said. Not grab. Emma looked at it. She studied it with those gray eyes. Then she looked up. She looked at Noah. She looked at Claire. She looked at Sophie. She reached out her hand. She put her palm flat against Claire's cheek, checking, making sure. Everyone there. Everyone counted. And for a moment the 4 of them were still in the middle of the opening day noise, in the room that smelled like coffee and paint, and the forward motion of things, in the city that didn't care, and the morning that kept going, and the life that had no obligation to make sense, but had somehow, against all reasonable expectation, made something. Claire covered Emma's hand with hers. She looked at Noah over Emma's head. He looked back. They had not said the word yet, the word that named what this was. They had been careful with it, both of them, the way you were careful with things you didn't want to break by naming too soon. But some things didn't need the word. Some things were already exactly what they were, with or without the name for them. Emma's hand on Claire's face. Sophie's yellow wall. The song that kept going. Noah holding his coffee and his daughter, and the knowledge that the worst thing that had ever happened to him had not, in the end, been the last thing. It had been the first page of something he was still writing. Something with Sarah's eyes in it. Something with a yellow wall. Something that was not a replacement for what was lost, and not a consolation prize, and not a coincidence, but a continuation. The truest and most difficult and most human kind. The kind that only happened when 2 people, who were both broken, decided, separately and together, to keep going anyway. To walk through the door. To say yes when someone offered. To hold on. They were still holding on. And that was the whole story. And it was enough. It was more than enough. It was everything.